Donna, Washington.
Good afternoon, everybody. Well, I told Joyce I was going to do a tongue twister just because I have an interpreter. And I told her I would do it fast, but we'll do the first one slowly. Are you ready? Yeah. Peter Piper picked a peck of purple pickled peppers. A peck of purple pickled peppers Peter Piper picked. If Peter Piper picked a peck of purple pickled peppers, where's the peck of purple pickled peppers Peter Piper picked? And then I told her we'd do it at normal speed. Are you ready? Okay. Peter Piper picked a peck of purple pickled peppers, a peck of purple pickled peppers, Peter Piper picked a peck of purple pickled peppers, where's the peck of purple pickled peppers Peter Piper picked? My name is Donna Washington. I love folk tales, but in this tent today, I'm actually going to do a piece of personal narrative. I am one of 7 children. Is there anyone out there who is an only child? If you are an only child, you know nothing about what it means to be a child. If you are an only child and your mother goes into the kitchen and someone has taken a lipstick and drawn a big happy face on the wall, you are in trouble. If there are 2 of you, nobody did it. Who drew this lipstick picture on the wall? Not me, not me. See, nobody. If there are 3 of you, the dog did it. How many of you have blamed things on animals that clearly need an opposable thumb? If there are 4 of you, somebody visiting the other day did it. How many of you have blamed things on someone who is not right in front of you? Anyone ever done that before? Oh yeah, even as grown-ups we do that, don't we? And if there are 5 or more, it's just up for grabs. Now, we did not start with 7 children. Nobody starts with 7 children. My mother had 4, and then my father was stationed in South Korea. And my parents were apart for 6 months, and they pine for each other. Oh, this was back in the day when they had to write letters. They wrote each other these beautiful letters. They couldn't make it the entire year. So my father changed his status in South Korea so that the family could be brought over. And my mother is a major officer's wife. So the first thing she does is start volunteering. And she volunteered in an orphanage that was right off of the base. And my parents decided they'd adopt 1 child. And they started reading about children. And one particular type of child in the 70s, Amerasians. Half black, half Korean. And in the 70s, there was a lot of discrimination against those kids in Korea. They weren't allowed to get citizenship. And though technically they were American citizens, the United States would not let them immigrate. So my parents thought, let's adopt 1. And my mother went to the man who ran the orphanage outside the base, and she said, do you ever get Amerasian children here? And he said, we don't keep that kind here. And she said, oh, I won't be back. And then my parents started reading about where they could adopt one of these children. And they read about this orphanage up in the mountains run by this Catholic priest named Father King. And there was 1 child in particular they were interested in. His name was Joseph, and he had been abandoned 3 times. His mother took him to the orphanage and said she was going to come back, and she didn't. One family took him and had him for 6 months and then took him back to the orphanage. The last family took him, went through the entire adoption process and left him asleep in the house, went to the airport to fly back to America, called the orphanage and said, go pick him up. My parents thought, that is the kid for us. We have 4 other children. If he is unhappy, they will just beat it out of him. So my parents, we all drive up to this orphanage up in the mountains, and this kid gets in our car, and he is the saddest kid you have ever seen. He's all crunched in on himself. He's in the back seat. He's holding himself together. He won't meet anybody's eyes. He was with us for 3 months, and we started beating it out of him. He was a funny kid. He had the driest sense of humor. He was so loving and so kind. And then we got a call from the Korean government that said, take him back to the orphanage. It's like, why? Because he's been adopted. Woo, 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 woo. He lives at an orphanage. Yes. Take him back. So, why do we have to take him back? The family that had him before you adopted him. So he's already been adopted. You cannot adopt him, take him back to the orphanage. That doesn't even make any sense. What if we refuse to take him back? Then we will send the police to come. Whoa, everybody calm down. We will take him back. And the entire time my parents were driving him back up into the mountains, they were saying to him, we will come and get you. And you know he was thinking, yeah, right. So my parents start calling everybody they could think of. President Carter, President Park Chung-il, who was the president of South Korea, Mia Farrow, because she was adopting children from all over the world. Somebody help us. And then the priest called us and said, I have an idea. And my parents said, what is it? He said, let's change his name. And my parents said, excuse us? Joseph Bach has been adopted. Let's change his name to Joseph Yi, and then you can adopt him. And my parents asked, is that legal? And the priest responded, do you care? So we changed his name, and the paperwork went right through. And my parents left us home with a big welcome home banner and a cake and a babysitter, and they drove up into the mountains to get Joseph. And when they got up there, there was a little boy who was just recently at the orphanage, and he really did not get how the whole process worked. He'd only been there for a few days. He saw my parents get out of the car and thought, they look good. He went into the orphanage and packed his luggage. He got in the back seat of the car and buckled himself in. My parents came out of the orphanage. There was a child buckled in the back seat of the car. They didn't know what to do with him. They took him home. And then we were 6. About a year later, there were all these signs up around our church about a woman who was going to be turning 15. And if she turned 15 before she was adopted, she wouldn't be allowed to be adopted, and she couldn't immigrate. Could some family just foster her and get her to America? She'd have a better life. And my parents thought, we have 6 kids. 7 is no problem. So she came to live with us. And after a year, my parents thought, this is foolish. You know, she's going to be turning 15 soon, but she calls us mom and dad. We're going to send her to college. We're going to adopt this one too. And then we were 7. Yes. Seven kids brings all sorts of interesting problems. Anyone who's in a multiple child family knows that sometimes things happen. You know what I'm talking about. My father sits down with the book, he opens it up, he's going to turn the light on, and as soon as he touches it, it falls into 30 different pieces. He knows he didn't break it by touching it. Somebody broke that lamp, stacked it up carefully, and walked away, hoping that the next person would think that they broke it. How many of you have done something like that? My mother can't find her favorite coffee cup. Eventually she does find it. Someone has broken the handle off, stuck it in the cup, and put it way in the back of the cabinet. How many of you have broken something and then hid it so nobody could find it? When we were little, my parents thought it was their job to figure out who did it and punish the perpetrator. My mother would make half a dozen cookies. Oh, more than 4 dozen, there's a whole bunch of us. She would say, don't eat any of these cookies before dinner. And we would say, okay. And she would come back and half of them gone. Who ate these cookies? I don't know. I said, I don't know. Open your mouths. If you had cookie residue back there, you were in trouble. We got older. We got smart. You eat the cookies, and then what? You brush your teeth. Who ate these cookies? I don't know. I don't know. Open your mouth. The kids with minty breath would get in trouble. It was a race. We'd think of something, she'd think of something. We'd think of something, she'd think of something. We'd think of something, she'd think of something. Finally, my parents got sick of this, and they said, okay, that's it. Go downstairs, and in 5 minutes, someone better get up here and tell us who did this. And we would troop downstairs. My older brother was never home. He was the oldest. He became the judge. We'd pick the two kids we thought most likely to have done the thing. They were the suspects. Each of them would pick a lawyer. We'd argue about it for about 4.5 minutes. The last two would vote on who they thought did it. And then we would pick the kid who was in the least amount of trouble at that second with my parents and send that kid back upstairs to confess. And we did that through our childhood. And I must tell you, we solved all of the problems except one. And that one incident has gone down in the history of our family as the Great Sugar Incident. And I'm going to tell you what happened, which should tell you a lot about what happened. Because I'm the only one who can tell you. I was a good child. How many of you are the good child? Oh, yeah. But in every family, there is one child who does everything. If something is lost or misplaced or whatever, they probably did it. How many of you are that child? So few people admit to this. But in every family, there's got to be at least one. In our family, the child most likely to have done the thing was Milton. Milton was the child who buckled himself into the backseat of our car. He was the kid who adopted us. Milton was in trouble because Milton could not visualize the future. Every idea he ever had was brilliant. He's in the bedroom throwing up a baseball, he says, I bet I could open my window and take the screen off and go across the road and throw this baseball through my open window. Brilliant! He never got to the next step. What if I miss? What if I hit a window that is not open? What if someone is walking into this bedroom when a baseball comes sailing through? He just never got that far. Milton was always in trouble. And in my family, when you did something really wrong, my father's attitude was work builds character. How many of you have families like this? You get in trouble, they make you clean out the garage or something. In my family, because my father was a big military dude, we had this big chore chart by the back door. And across the top was every chore that had to be done. And down the side, every week in the year. And in thousands of little boxes in the middle, our names. He did this by hand every single year. If you wanted to find out what chore you had, you would find the chore. You'd find the week. If your name was in the box, you had that chore for 1 week. And there was a checks and balances system. If the person who had it the week after you told on you that you hadn't done it, and my parents checked and you hadn't done it, then you had it for an extra week, and the person who told on you got the week off. Our house was clean. But there was one chore nobody ever wanted to do. What do you suppose would be the worst possible chore to have? Mowing the lawn. I lived in a patriarchal household. Women didn't have to mow the lawn. Clean the bathrooms. We had 4 bathrooms. You only had to clean the one you used. We had an Alsatian shepherd. For those of you who do not know, they're oversized shepherds. Ours was named Bear because we got him from a friend who shows Alsatians, and if they're too big, you can't show them. So we got an oversized puppy. His name was Bear. His feet were this big when we got him. He lived in the backyard. There was a chore called Duke Patrol. you had to get a shovel because there was no pooper scooper in the world big enough. Duke Patrol meant you shoveled up after this giant dog. And you didn't have to go looking for the piles. You could see them from the kitchen window. If you got in trouble at my house, my father would give you extra Duke Patrol. At one point, Milton had Duke Patrol for 6 months straight. Not because he did one particularly terrible thing, but he just kept doing stuff. My father would say, "Add a week." Now, when we were little, my mother, she used to make Kool-Aid in a 2-liter pitcher. How many of you still do that? Make drinks in 2-liter pitchers, tea or whatever it is? Not in my house. As my brothers grew up, the bottoms of their stomachs disappeared. Basically, what that means is they could eat and 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 eat. And within like 5 minutes, they'd be like, "I'm hungry." So my mother started making Kool-Aid in a 10-gallon picnic cooler that sat right there on the counter. And if you wanted to get Kool-Aid, you had to fill that thing up, and it took a lot. And you also had to make sure there was enough sugar in it. You could always tell who made it by how much sugar was in it. I made it perfectly. My brother Darren, the Cavity King, put so much sugar in there, you got it was gloppy. My brother Don, he was a big old athlete. If he made it, it was deceptive. It looked fine until you tasted it. You had to put sugar in there to make it okay. Like I said, I made it perfectly every time. But the thing about the sugar was my mother kept it in a 20-pound bag that lived over the stove. And if you ran out of sugar, you had to fill that sugar thing up, and nobody wanted to do that. And if you got the last glass of Kool-Aid, you had to make more Kool-Aid, and no one wanted to do that either. So we could go for a week without making more Kool-Aid. Have you ever had a small amount of warm, liquidy, sugary substance closed in a container for a week? It gets the consistency of snot, and it stinks. So, one afternoon, I left school before clubs, and I got home with the intention of putting my homework in my bedroom and having a snack before I walked back to school. And I opened the door, and my little poodle came out, and I put him out to do his business, and I went upstairs, and I got my cup, and I tried to get some Kool-Aid, but there was nothing in there. I shook it, still nothing. I opened it. So I got the snotty stuff out, got the spray, got the soap, turned it over, put it back, picked up the sugar container, it was really light. Opened the top, put it on top of the stove, climbed up there, wrestled out the great big bag of sugar, put a little bitty sugar tin, and put it back. I was being good. Then I found 10 packets of my favorite flavor, opened them up, put it in there, put the sugar in, stirred it up. Have you ever tried to fill up a 10-gallon picnic cooler at your sink? It doesn't fit under the faucet. You must use the hand sprayer. You ever been mad at people who aren't present? I finally get it done. I stir it up. I have my glass of Kool-Aid. I wipe everything down. I look at the clock. I have to go back for clubs. I have come home in the middle of the day to make Kool-Aid. That's fine. So I go down. I pick up my book bag. I let the dog back in. I'm halfway back to school. I realize I didn't even take my homework out of this book bag. Wasted trip. I get back home after my clubs, both my parents' cars from the driveway. I open the door. I look up. I realize every kid in my house is in trouble. My father is 6'4". He has black belts in judo, karate, hapkido, tansuro, and taekwondo. He knows how to use nunchucks and swords. And the army thought it would be a fabulous idea to teach him how to shoot rifles. He is the blackest human being I've ever seen in my life. My father looks like midnight with eyeballs. He's a beautiful man, but I must be honest, he was terrifying when I was a child. And he had a lovely tenor voice unless he was mad, and he sounded like this. I walk in the front door. Donna, yes, come upstairs. Okay. I go and look around the corner. You can see all 7 of my brothers and sisters standing up against the wall, and you can tell everyone's really in trouble because nobody will look at my parents. And I'm thinking, I don't know what happened, but I'm glad I was not here. My father says, who did this? I don't know. Who did it? I don't know. I'm so glad I don't know what happened. I'm standing next to my brother Darren, the Cavity King. I say, man, Darren, what happened? Donna, be quiet. Darren, what happened? Donna, be quiet. Donna, be quiet. Okay. My mother's in the kitchen. My mother is 5'2". She's very light-skinned. She would put Martha Stewart to shame. She's always perfectly put together. She's in the kitchen. She's going, you people would live like pigs if I didn't live here. How many of you have mothers who mutter? How many of you are a muttering mother? And I'm thinking, I don't know what happened, but I'm glad I wasn't here, because if my mother is this mad, she will not save us from my father. My father said, who spilled sugar all over the stove and just left it there? Have you ever been in a situation where you had information that nobody else had, and you had to try to decide what to do about it? I like to think I was about to explain what happened when my father said the magic words. If you tell us who did it now, no one will get in trouble. Anyone ever heard that before? Anyone ever taken a parent up on that? Yeah, it's a lie. Of course, I don't know, it might not have been a lie, but anytime my father said that, you could forget it. Nobody was going to confess. Who did this? I don't know. I said, I don't know. Go downstairs in 5 minutes. Someone better come up here and tell us who did this. So we go trooping down the stairs. And normally we pick our judge and our jury. Everybody turns to Milton. Man, you know you did this. You better go up there and say you did. Milton said, I did not do this. Man, you know you did. I did not. You know you did. You better go up there. I didn't do it. You know you did. I didn't say anything. This went on for 5 minutes. And then we heard my father say, all right, whoever did this better come upstairs. And normally a lone, forlorn child climbs the stairs. And a lone, forlorn child stands before my parents with his head bowed. A lone, forlorn, repentant child says, I'm sorry. That did not happen. 7 children climbed the stairs. 7 children lined up down the hall, and nobody would look at my parents. My father was trying to keep it together. He said, who did this? And 7 little voices said, I don't know. Have you ever looked into your parents' eyes when they're losing it? There's a recording back there. It says, I love this child. I love this child. I will not kill this child. My father lost it. He swole up in the hallway. That's it. Line up outside the bedroom door. I'm going to spank all of you. We put Milton in the front of the line. My father went down the hall. Boom, boom. He was so big, he was shaking the house. My mother followed him going, oh my goodness, I can't believe he's going to spank everybody. I can't believe he's going to spank everybody. And we were giving my mother the baby eyes. You know the baby eyes. That's when you look at your mother with your heart in your eyes and you think as hard as you can, Mother, we are your babies. Don't let this crazy man hurt us. My father went in the bedroom. Milton, man, say you did it. I did not do this. Man, just say you did it. I did not. The door opened. And there was my father with a great big black leather belt. Who's first? We all point to Milton. My father drags him in the bedroom. He's not going to spank him. He's not going to spank him. He's not going to spank him. He's spanking him. And now we don't know what to do because our scapegoat is getting spanked. The door opens. Milton comes out. That didn't hurt. That didn't hurt. That didn't hurt. He goes down the hall, down the stairs. My father says, who's next? My little sister was next. She was 6 years old. Don't feel sorry for her. She started crying before anything happened to her. Oh, no! And she hit the ground. And when I saw that, I felt bad, but not bad enough to confess. And then something else happened. Darren, the Cavity King, stepped out of line and said, it was me. I spilled sugar on the stove. And when I saw that, I felt bad. Not bad enough to confess. We all went downstairs. Milton was sitting on the couch. For the next 2 months, everybody gave Milton a hard time. Well, except me, because I know he didn't do it. 12 years passed. My little sister was going to the same university I went to, Northwestern. We were all sitting around the kitchen table in my house. They were eating my food. They were using my electricity. I think this is an important thing. And Milton said, do you remember the time that I got in trouble for spilling sugar? Yeah. Darren said, I took the blame and you did it. Milton said, I did not do it. And I thought, it's been 12 years. What are they gonna do to me? I said, about that. And I explained it just as clearly as I explained it to you. Everybody stopped breathing. And then everyone started yelling at me. And my brother Milton stood up and said, I told you it wasn't me! 6 years later, I got married. Milton stood up at my wedding and told this story to my husband and all of our guests. He turned to my new husband and said, watch her. She can lie with a straight face. I started telling this story all over the country to clear Milton's good name. And some kid walked up to me at one point and said, you know, Miss Washington, that story has a moral. I said, you've got to be kidding me. What is it? So look, if you do something, just fess up at the beginning and get it over with. His buddy was standing there and said, that is not the moral of that story. If you get away with something, hello, get away with it. I wish I had been just a little bit older, because I would have been able to say, you never get away with that kind of stuff. It always comes back to get you somewhere. And that is the story of the sugar incident.